A stranger in the dust. The wind howled across the edge of the terrace wastes where nothing but sand, broken tech, and silence remained. Captain Eli Corrin adjusted the scarf over his mouth as he climbed out of his salvage crawler. The scanner beeped, faintly just static and echo. He wasn't here for profit, not anymore. He'd stopped chasing credits when Earth Command declared him unfit for duty after the Khazar mission. Too many scars, too many nightmares. Now he wandered, looking for something else, something he couldn't name. Eli moved toward a crumbling husk of a wrecked freighter buried halfway in the sand. The metal groaned under his boots as he stepped inside. It was cooler here, darker, like stepping into a forgotten memory. He flicked on his torch. Debris littered the hallway's scorched walls, twisted beams, and frozen shadows where fire had once danced. Then he heard it. Not a sound, really, more like breath, ragged, soft, trying to be silent. He raised his rifle slowly, instincts taking over. "Hello," he called. "I'm not here to hurt you." No reply. Just another breath, a scraping shuffle. He followed the sound until he reached a collapsed section near the engine room. The torch caught movement. Two small figures, huddled in the corner, covered in tattered cloth and ash. Children, no aliens. Their skin was pale lavender, hair white and ragged, faces thin from hunger. Eli lowered his weapon. You're just kids." One of them flinched. The other raised her head slowly, eyes glowing faint blue in the dark. She stared at him not with fear, but with tired defiance. She clutched something to her chest, a smooth black shard pulsing weakly with blue light. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "Leave. We have nothing." Eli knelt, placing his weapon aside. "I'm not looking for anything. Just heard something. Didn't expect anyone alive." The other one whimpered, a younger sibling maybe, half conscious and shaking. They were starving. Not just hungry, starving to the bone. He dug into his pack, pulled out a protein bar, and tossed it gently toward them. They didn't move. "It's not poison, I promise," he said. "You don't eat, you die. I won't watch that happen." The older girl didn't blink, but slowly she reached out and took the bar. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped it, then split it in half and gave the smaller one the larger piece. They ate like they hadn't in weeks. Eli stayed there, silent, letting them trust the silence more than words. After some time, he spoke again. "I have shelter, water, heat. You don't have to stay here. It's not safe." The girl looked at him. "Nothing is safe," she said. "Still," Eli said, standing up and offering his hand. "You shouldn't die in the dark." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, without a word, she helped her sister stand. Together they followed him into the cold wind. They rode back in the crawler, the engines grumbling as dusk fell over the Tarath horizon. Eli handed them canteens of water and wrapped one in a thermal blanket. The crawler's AI beeped once. Biosigns stable, malnourishment critical, recommend medical attention. He didn't know their names, their language, or what species they were. The galaxy was wide, and the war had scattered survivors like seeds in the dust. But that didn't matter. They were here, they were alive. That night, he built a fire near the crawler while the girls sat close together under a patchwork tarp. They didn't speak much. The older one kept watching him, quiet, calculating, but not afraid. He cooked some dried meat and root stew and placed 2 bowls near them. They didn't move. "It's food," he said gently. "Eat. You need strength." Still, they didn't touch it. Instead, the older girl looked at him and said something in a strange language. The words crackled in the air like static. The translator built into his wristband buzzed. "No match," it reported. "Unregistered dialect." Eli sighed. "Figures. Ben." The younger one leaned forward and touched his arm. Her skin was cold, her fingers small. She spoke one word, soft, clear, and unmistakable. "Anchor." Eli blinked. "Anchor." She nodded once, her voice barely audible. "You are Anchor." He didn't understand, but something in her tone chilled him more than the wind ever could. He watched them sleep later that night, curled up together under the blankets in the crawler's main compartment. Despite everything, they looked peaceful, like they hadn't been in years. He sat alone at the front, staring into the dunes, replaying her voice in his head. "Anchor." He didn't know what it meant, but deep inside, in the part of him that always knew when something was about to change, he felt it. Something had begun, something he couldn't walk away from anymore. The bond beneath the ash. The sun rose sluggishly over the Tarath wastes, casting burnt orange light across the shifting dunes. Inside the crawler, Eli Corrin stirred from a restless sleep. He sat up, rubbed the back of his neck, and checked the vitals on the girls. They were still sleeping, if it could be called sleep. The younger one trembled occasionally, as if fighting something unseen. The older sister remained absolutely still, like she didn't dare relax, even in dreams. He stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The wind had calmed, but ash still clung to the horizon. The sky above Tareth always looked bruised, and for Eli it felt like the galaxy was holding its breath. He brewed something resembling coffee from freeze-dried roots and stared at the scanner. Still no signs of movement. Still no signal. The girls had said nothing of their origin, their names, or why they'd been left behind. But he knew they hadn't ended up here by accident. When he stepped back inside, the older girl was awake, sitting beside her sister with wide, alert eyes. She watched him enter without flinching. Eli kept his voice calm. "You slept a little. That's good." She tilted her head slightly, still saying nothing. "I'm Eli," he said, placing a hand to his chest. Eli. She blinked once, then pointed to herself. Lura, then to her sister. "Nay." He repeated the names slowly. Lura, Nay. Stirred and sat up, eyes half-lidded but clear. Her face was gaunt, skin dull, but the bond between them was unmistakable. Lura gently placed a hand on her sister's forehead, and Nay seemed to calm instantly. They weren't just siblings. They were connected on a level that Eli had never seen before, not in any alien or human. He warmed more food and water, placing it nearby. "You'll stay with me until you're strong. I don't care what you are or where you're from. No one deserves to be left to die." Laura finally moved, crawling forward and picking up the bowl. She didn't eat right away. Instead, she scooped some for Nay, then carefully inspected it, sniffed it, even touched it with a glowing fingertip. After a moment, she nodded and began feeding her sister slowly, precisely, like a healer. Only after Nay had eaten half did she begin eating herself. Eli watched silently. These two weren't just survivors. They were something different. Maybe, or made to be more than they appeared. The way Lura moved, the way her eyes scanned every part of the crawler, how she listened to distant sounds like they meant something or made him uneasy, but not in a threatening way, in a too quiet way. Later that day, Eli tried to run diagnostics on the shard Lura carried. It emitted pulses at regular intervals, soft waves of electromagnetic energy his tools couldn't read. He placed it on the crawler's analysis pad. The screen flickered instantly. Static. Lights flashed and then went dark. The entire diagnostic grid shut down. "What the hell?" he muttered. Behind him, Lura stood in the doorway. "No touch," she said softly. He raised his hands. Okay, just trying to understand what it is." Lura picked up the shard and hugged it to her chest again. "Anchor is not allowed to question. Anchor is to carry." That word again. He stepped closer. "You called me that anchor, why?" She looked at him, and for the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not suspicion, not fear. Something older. She pointed to his chest. "Your soul heard us." Eli's throat tightened. "What are you two?" She didn't answer, but then she did something he didn't expect. She took his hand and placed the black shard into it. It felt warm, too warm, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. Eli gasped. His mind spun as visions flashed before his eyes. Ruined cities of crystal, giant machines half buried in ice, a great gate floating in space surrounded by stars he'd never seen, and two small figures, Lura and Nay, chained alone, waiting. He dropped the shard, his hand shook. What the hell was that? Lura picked it up again. "We call you came. Now you cannot leave." Nay coughed behind her. Lura went back to her, soothing her gently. Eli stood frozen. Something had just passed through him. A memory, maybe even a piece of whatever power they held. He wasn't hallucinating. That was real, and it left a mark. He took a breath and sat near them. "If I'm your anchor, what happens next?" Nay looked up with soft eyes and whispered, "You carry the gate." Eli's chest tightened. That term gate, he'd heard it once before, during his time with Earth Command, buried in old classified files. Ancient alien structures, rumored to bend space, time, or life itself. No one had ever found one, but now he wasn't so sure. That night, a cold wind swept over the camp. Eli set up proximity sensors and reinforced the crawler's shielding. The stars above looked oddly still. The fire burned low. The girls slept close together under one thermal blanket, and Eli tried to get some rest beside the pilot console. But then the sensors, CHIRPED. Movement, out in the dunes, far but deliberate. Eli rose instantly. He grabbed his rifle and climbed to the top of the crawler. Through the long-range scope, he saw faint figures, dark, heavy, not from the desert. They moved like soldiers, at least 3 of them, maybe more. He slipped back inside. "We've got company." Lura opened her eyes instantly. She was alert, already moving to stand. They come for the bond. How do you know? He asked. We feel them, Nay said softly. Eli powered up the crawler. The engine growled, then stabilized. Alright, then we move. But as he prepared to leave, Lura stepped in front of him. We can't run forever, not without waking it. Waking what? Eli asked. She raised the shard. It glowed brighter. Now, and Nay's hands began to shine in response. The place where our kind began, where we were made. Eli looked between them. Where is it? Nay simply pointed to the far horizon, to the edge of the wastes where no one dared go. A place long buried under myth and fear. The vault, she said. The last gate. Eli exhaled. Of course it is. As the crawler kicked up dust and sped toward the unknown, the girls huddled close behind him, not afraid, just waiting for whatever came next. Whispers of the forgotten gate. The crawler rattled across the broken desert, its wheels grinding over ancient stone and buried tech. The wind howled louder the deeper they pushed into the uncharted zones. Eli Corrin gripped the controls tightly, the map on his console barely functional, more static than guidance. This was dead land, no satellites, no signal, no history, only myth. But Lura and Nay were certain. Somewhere out here was the place where they were born, or built. They didn't speak much. Lura sat in silence, watching the horizon like she could see what lay beyond it. Nay hummed softly to herself, head resting on her sister's shoulder, her eyes half closed. The shard in Lura's lap pulsed brighter now, almost angry. Every few miles it flashed stronger, like it was reacting to something buried deep beneath the ground. Are you sure it's out here? Eli finally asked. Lura turned to him, calm as ever. The bond grows louder. He didn't like the way she said it, like something was waking up beneath their feet. Something not meant to be awake. The terrain shifted from sand to black rock, jagged and sharp like old bones. Lightning forked across the sky, though there were no clouds, only the strange green hue of upper atmosphere plasma. Even the air tasted different, now charged and metallic. Eli pulled the crawler to a stop beside a cracked cliff face. The shard began to vibrate, and Lura held it up. The pulsing matched the faint glow bleeding from a crevice between two slabs of stone. Nay sat up, alert. We're close. Together they exited the crawler. Eli slung his rifle over his shoulder, his pulse drumming in his ears. The cliff seemed ordinary at first glance, but as they approached, symbols appeared glowing softly. Beneath the surface, ancient and fluid like they were being written in real time. Lura stepped forward and pressed the shard into the center of the wall. A sound rumbled from deep below, like a machine drawing breath after centuries of silence. The stone split with a hiss. A narrow pathway opened, descending into darkness. You're sure about this? Eli asked. Lura gave him a look that was almost kind. You are already part of it. He followed them down the spiral descent, torchlight bouncing off smooth black, walls laced with glowing filaments blue-silver, and a faint gold that shimmered when he blinked. The air grew warmer, thicker, like walking through memory. They passed murals etched into the walls, strange humanoid figures kneeling before a gate of stars, surrounded by twin lights. Lura paused once, placing her hand on one of the images. It showed a being human-looking standing beside two children with glowing hands. Behind them stood an open gate, and from it, light spilled across galaxies. Is that supposed to be me? Eli asked, half joking, half scared. Nae answered. It always was. They reached a massive chamber at the bottom. Unlike the corridors above, it was alive. Vines of light crisscrossed the floor, converging on a central platform where a single pedestal stood. Above it hovered a metallic orb, slowly rotating, etched with layers of alien script. The moment Eli stepped into the room, the orb began spinning. Faster. Lura walked up to the pedestal and placed the shard into its center. It sank in silently. The orb stopped spinning, then the room exploded with light. Walls unfolded, machines bloomed like flowers. Energy surged through conduits and ancient systems hummed back to life. A voice not spoken but felt echoed through the chamber. Anchor confirmed. Bond stabilized. Vault awakening. Eli staggered backward. What the hell is this place? Lura turned toward him, her expression grave. A cradle, a tomb, weapon, all three. The orb above the pedestal split open, revealing a sphere of clear liquid, and inside it, suspended, was another shard larger, pulsing wildly. This is the core, Lura whispered. The heart of the gate. It was locked until the anchor returned. Eli looked at her. You mean me? Why me? Nay's voice was soft, like snow melting. Because you chose. He didn't understand, not completely, but something inside him beneath the bones, past the scars did. He stepped forward. The orb responded, beams of light scanning him from head to toe. Symbols wrapped around his arms like tattoos drawn by invisible ink. His mind burned with images against stars forming, dying, gates opening, beings of light, walking among mortals. And then, silence. When he opened his eyes, he was standing on the edge of a cliff in his vision. The real cliff, the one outside. He stumbled back, dizzy. The vault was changing. Walls shifted, forming new halls. A large screen unfolded before them, displaying orbiting objects above the planet. Eli's heart dropped. Multiple signals. Human, war class. They followed me, he said. They tracked the crawler. Lura didn't flinch. They will try to take us. Nay stepped forward, standing before the screen. Her voice was sharper now. Then we show them what they were never meant to see. From within the vault, machinery stirred. Armor plating slid open from the floor. Drones ancient, sleek, and glowing with old power rose from their cradles. The vault wasn't just a sanctuary. It was a fortress. Maybe even a final defense left behind by a civilization that no longer existed. Eli turned to the twins. You've done this before, haven't you? Lura nodded. In another cycle, another failure. Nay added, this time, we're not alone. They weren't children, not really. They were echoes, living keys, sentient relics of a people who had given up on the galaxy ever remembering them. And somehow, by chance or fate, Eli had stepped into their story. The vault, doors rumbled. Outside the dust kicked up again. Dropships were approaching. Eli clenched his jaw. We don't have much time. He walked to the pedestal. The shard was still glowing. His hand hovered over it. Lura placed her hand on top of his. We bonded together. The moment he touched it, power surged into him. He felt the vault wrap around his mind, like a nervous system latching onto his thoughts. He could see the world above, see the warships preparing orbital lock, see Admiral Nolan's face. He recognized that look, cold, absolute, the kind of man who burned forests to kill a single. Fly. A voice from the vault echoed again. Do you wish to defend? Eli looked at Lura and Nay. Then he whispered, yes. Above them, the sky cracked. The war had come. And Eli Corin, once broken and cast aside, had become the key to something far greater than survival. He had become the voice of the forgotten. The human firewall. The vault pulsed with light as ancient systems synced with Eli Corin's mind. He stood at the center of the awakening, surrounded by whispering machines and silent power. Above ground, the horizon trembled. Dust blew sideways, unnatural and fast, propelled by the downward force of descending drops. Eli could feel every motion, like the vault had grown nerves through the ground. 5 enemy ships, each carrying a squad of elite troops, neural dampeners, plasma rifles, human tech meant to neutralize anything alien, meant for war, not questions. Inside the vault, Lura and Nay stood before a massive wall of translucent light like glass, but shifting with data. Shapes moved behind it. Spheres, machines, silhouettes of things long buried in time. They're scanning, Nay said. Her tone lacked fear. They believe if they catch us off guard, they can contain us. Eli stepped back from the pedestal, breathing hard. His body still glowed faintly from the bonding. Silver veins of light traced his arms, vanishing beneath his jacket. His heart beat slower now, stronger. Not human anymore, not entirely. Can the vault defend us? He asked. Lura nodded. If we ask it to, what happens if it does? Nay whispered. They'll call it treason. Outside, the first dropship touched down, kicking up black sand. Troopers poured out in perfect formation, faces obscured by mirrored helmets. At their head walked a figure in dark armor with a red-lined cape trailing behind. Admiral Nolan. From inside the crawler's system, Eli's receiver suddenly crackled to life. A voice, cold and metallic, filled the air. Corin, this is Admiral Nolan of Earth Command. You are hereby ordered to surrender and relinquish custody of the unknown entities immediately. Failure to comply will result in lethal action. Eli narrowed his eyes. He keyed the mic. Didn't take you long. Your ship's signal was corrupted, but we tracked the anomaline energy spike from something buried beneath the sand. You activated it. You bonded with it. I didn't plan to, Eli muttered. You're no longer fully human. The data we've collected marks you as a Class C transformation. Your status is revoked. Turn yourself in now, and the others won't be harmed. Lura stepped forward. Eli didn't respond immediately. He stared at the speaker for a long second, then turned it off. He's not here for negotiation. He's here to end this. The twins stepped beside him. Nay placed her small hand in his. You carry the anchor, but the choice to fight, that's yours. Eli nodded. Then let's give them something to think about. He turned to the pedestal and pressed both hands against its surface. The vault responded. The walls vibrated with ancient voices, and a massive structure unfolded behind them, a long bridge leading to a chamber full of dormant constructs. Sentinel units, six-legged walkers, floating drones with eyes like stars. Eli blinked. You've got an army in here. They've never had an anchor, Lura said. Now they did. He concentrated, and the sentinels stirred. The vault obeyed. Like muscle to thought. Above ground, the dust exploded as pillars rose from the ash, forming a perimeter around the cliff entrance. Defensive towers unfolded with eerie precision. Lights activated. Shields blinked into view. The human troops scrambled into cover. Nolan stood watching from afar, lips pressed in a tight line. He activated the outer vault. This is worse than we thought. His second-in-command turned orders. Nolan's hand hovered over the detonator. Send the pulse wave. Shut it down before it links any further. Inside the vault, alarms blared. A wave of red symbols flashed through the walls. Nay winced. They're trying to shut the bond. Kill the signal. Eli held on. His fingers dug into the pedestal. Not today. The vault countered. Energy surged upward into the shielding matrix. The sky lit up like a dome of glass filled with lightning. The pulse wave hit and shattered across the defense net like rain against steel. Admiral Nolan watched in stunned silence. That was ... supposed to work. It didn't, his officer said. Lura turned toward Eli. They don't understand. This isn't just defense, it's memory. What do you mean? She pointed to the glowing lines across the walls. Each activation wakes not just systems but knowledge, places, secrets. Eli looked around. So what's next? Nay walked toward the center ring. Her feet glided over a shifting platform that lit beneath her steps. The gate deep. Rumble echoed beneath them. Panels in the far wall opened, revealing an enormous archway, smooth, circular, humming with layered glyphs. It was over 30 meters tall, flanked by monoliths of silent stone. It wasn't a weapon, it was a path. Eli approached it slowly. Where does it go? Lura joined him. Home. But your people abandoned you, he said. Our creators did, she answered. But others wait. The last sanctuary. The place where this bond began. A blue beam of light scanned Eli's body as he stepped closer. He felt the vault evaluating him again, digging deeper. Not into DNA, but soul, his choices, his reasons. Then a voice, not machine, not memory, but something else entirely whispered into the vault. Gate key accepted. Anchor verified. Exit. Pathway initializing. The arch lit up. A spiral of light danced in the center like water rippling in reverse. Stars shimmered inside. It wasn't just a gate, it was a jump bridge. Interstellar, interdimensional, maybe a way out. But the warships above didn't plan to let anyone leave from the sky. More drop pods ignited, descending fast. Nolan had given up on negotiations. The time for subtlety was over. Inside the vault, Eli stepped away from the gate. His heart pounded. How do we close it? Lura shook her head. You don't. Once opened, the path remains for others to follow. But you decide who walks it. Eli raised his hand and the sentinels moved, assembling at the mouth of the tunnel. Above them, the defense towers rotated, locking on targets. A message appeared on the main console. Enemy approach, engagement required. He didn't want blood, but he wouldn't let the twins be taken again. He pressed his palm to the screen. Engagement, ... non-lethal, defense only. The AI acknowledged the order. Moments later, human troopers poured over the cliffs. Plasma fire lit the rocks. Drones screamed. The vault responded with sonic bursts that dropped the soldiers to their knees. Shields that melted bullets mid-air. Pulses that rewrote the enemy's targeting systems in real time. It was a war without death. A wall of mercy backed by terrifying intelligence. Admiral Nolan stood aboard his command craft, jaw clenched. He's using it, ... but not killing. That's not a threat, his second-in-command replied. It's a message. Nolan turned slowly. He's not defending himself. Then what is he doing? The officer looked at the gate opening behind Eli and whispered, he's defending the future. What the gate remembers. The arch continued to shimmer with swirling blue light, like a star folded into liquid. As battle echoed above, Eli Corin stood before it, his pulse steady in the chaos. The gate wasn't just a machine, it was conscious, waiting for him to remember something he never knew he carried. Behind him, Lyra and Nay stood calm as ever, untouched by the gunfire outside, untouched by fear. They had seen this before. 1,000 cycles ago, Eli took one step toward the gate. The world paused, not physically, not in time, but in perception. He stood now in a field of gold grass under a purple sky. 3 moons hung above. He wasn't alone. Before him stood a tall figure robed in silver, faceless but familiar. The figure's voice echoed inside him, not in sound, but in knowing. You were the first anchor in 10,000 years who chose, without being commanded. That makes you rare. That makes you dangerous. Eli blinked. What is this place? The memory of the gate. It holds the echo of all who touched it, creators, betrayers, saviors. Now it asks what you will become. He turned and saw Lura and Nay in the vision, smaller, younger. Nay clung to Lura's leg, crying. Soldiers dragged their mother away. Behind them, a starship burned. Eli felt their pain not as an observer, but as if it bled into his soul. This is what you are protecting, the voice said. Not just them, but the choice they were never given. Suddenly, the vision melted. He was back. The vault shook again as one of the defense towers collapsed under heavy missile fire. The ground outside cratered. The sky above was red with atmospheric burn from descending warships. The last warning shot was gone. The enemy wasn't trying to capture anymore. They were trying to erase. Lura stood beside him, her voice quiet. You saw it, he nodded. Your past, your pain. She looked down. No, you saw yourself. The piece of you that was always connected. Eli didn't understand it fully, but the feeling inside him was no longer fear. It was clarity. Looked toward the massive glowing arch and stepped onto the platform before it. The gate reacted immediately. Rings of energy encircled him. His eyes flared silver, then gold. The pedestal behind him pulsed. Final confirmation. Activate stellar root. Eli turned back to the twins. If I open it, can we hold it? Nay answered this time. If you believe we should. The vault didn't require commands like a computer. It required conviction. Above ground, Admiral Nolan's warships formed. A circle in the clouds. Drop pods continued to rain down, trying to find a weakness in the vault's defenses. The Sentinels fought without killing. Not one human soldier had fallen yet. That confused Earth Command, and it terrified them. Inside the warship's command room, Admiral Nolan stood still, watching feeds from every angle. Eli was glowing. The twins stood beside him. The gate was alive. He's going to open it, the Admiral said. His officer glanced nervously. We still have options: orbital strike, gravity collapse, gamma burst. No, Nolan said coldly. If he survives those, we'll only prove their prophecy right, that humanity was never worthy. Back inside the vault, Eli raised his hand. I don't want war, he said aloud. I don't want revenge. Lura stepped beside him and whispered, then show them another path. He placed his hand on the final glyph. The vault roared. Energy spiraled outward from the gate. Every panel in the chamber lit with brilliant patterns, as if language itself was waking up. In orbit, the human ships staggered. Their instruments glitched. Star maps changed. A pulse spread through space faster than light-switching systems thought long forgotten. The gate had opened, and it was calling out. Eli fell to his knees, not from pain, but from the weight of it. He saw things no human had ever seen, made of music, suns shaped by thought, empires that ruled without violence. Then the fall, greed, fear, a single choice that scattered the twins' creators across galaxies. The gate had waited all. This time not for a warrior, but for a healer. Suddenly, the vault's ceiling shuddered. One of the warships had launched a kinetic strike. A long metal rod traveling at orbital velocity slammed into the outer cliffs. The ground cracked. Dust fell from above. Lura ran to Eli. The gate can't hold us, and the vault both. You must choose. Eli stood up slowly. I already did. He walked to the gate's mouth, took Nay's hand, and reached back for Lura. The three of them stepped into the light together. Gate responded. A column of gold fire encased them. Above the ashlands, Admiral Nolan watched a new structure emerge from the cliffside. It wasn't a weapon, it was a signal tower, a beacon for something far older. What is he doing? The officer asked. Nolan whispered, he's not escaping, he's guiding. Inside the gate, Eli stood between worlds. A sea of stars stretched before him. Behind him, Earth Command crumbled in confusion. The warships began to power down one by one, systems infected. With truth too deep to delete. Eli turned to the twins. This is your home. Lura shook her head. No, this is yours now. Nay nodded. We've always been looking for a place to belong. Now we build one. The stars responded. A path unfolded. Planets hidden by black holes revealed themselves. Gates long dormant flickered back to life. The message was clear. The forgotten were returning, and they had a human with them. The sanctuary planet. The gate released them like breath after a long silence. Eli Corin landed with both feet on ground that felt impossibly old, soft, humming beneath his boots, like the world itself remembered being touched. Above him, the sky, was silver blue, not a color he could name. The air smelled clean, untouched, and stretched across the horizon were ruins, not ruined structures, ancient, yes, but alive, pulsing with slow veins of gold light. Lura and Nay stepped beside him, in perfect stillness. "This is the sanctuary," Lura whispered. Nay added, "The last safe place. Our creators built it when they knew everything else would fall." They stood on a floating platform surrounded by colossal stone pillars, symbols carved into their faces, twisted and morphed as if reading Eli's presence and rewriting their own language to match him. Far ahead, an ivory tower rose into the sky, its tip glowing softly like a lighthouse lost in time. The gate behind them closed, but didn't vanish. It shimmered silently in the air, awaiting their return. Eli scanned the landscape. Strange trees twisted upward with bark like glass and leaves that reflected memory instead of light. Soft mechanical drones hovered overhead like birds, blinking, and watching not with suspicion, but curiosity. He looked at the twins. "Is this where your kind were meant to live?" Lura nodded. "Yes, but we were never allowed to come. The bond was too new, too unpredictable." Nay stared at the sky. "They feared what we would become if the anchor ever found us." Eli placed a hand to his chest, where the glow still pulsed faintly beneath his skin. "And what exactly have I become?" Laura's voice was calm, not less, not more, just something true. They began walking toward the tower. As they moved, the ground shifted to welcome their steps, pathways, lighting, doors opening. The sanctuary didn't just respond to Eli, it recognized him. Deep within its systems, the echo of his decision vibrated outward, waking things that had long gone silent. Inside the tower, the air turned cool. A wide chamber stretched into the heart of the structure. Walls of translucent stone held thousands of floating memory cores, more crystalline shapes, each spinning slowly, glowing with soft internal light. They whispered not in voices, but in feeling, regret, hope, loneliness, purpose. Eli approached the nearest core. It pulsed as he neared. A figure appeared above it, a projection of one of the twins' creators, tall and radiant, with eyes made of burning starlight. The image spoke directly into Eli's mind. "If you stand here, it means the bond survived. That one of them found you and you did not run." The voice was full of sorrow and pride. "We made a terrible mistake. In trying to protect the galaxy, from our failure we abandoned our only hope. If you hear this, you are that hope now." The memory faded. Eli looked down at his hands, shaking, not from fear, from the sheer scale of it all. He was just a scavenger, a discarded soldier. But now he was the bridge between something old and something waiting. Lura walked beside him. "Every anchor before you failed." Nay nodded. "Some ran, some tried to use the bond as power, others broke." Eli closed his eyes. "Why didn't I?" They didn't answer. Instead, they led him to the center of the tower, where a throne made of living crystal waited. Not grand, not royal, a seat made of light and design. "Sit," Laura said softly. He hesitated. "And if I do?" "You finish what they started." Eli sat. The tower responded immediately. Energy surged through the floor and into the walls. Above, a dome opened to the sky, revealing stars spinning slowly in the strange firmament. Symbols spiraled outward from the seat, and his vision went white. He saw again not dreams, but history. He saw the moment the twin project began to lights formed from biocoding and harmonic resonance, made not for war, but for communion. The ability to link across species and thought, to connect, to bind. Then he saw the betrayal, the fear, the isolation, the choice to lock away the gates and erase the twins from galactic memory. They became myths, then monsters, then nothing. Until now. When he awoke, he was alone, not physically but in purpose. The tower was now his to command. The sanctuary planet had accepted him as keeper. He stood slowly, unsure of how to breathe with this knowledge inside him. Outside the tower, Lura and Nay waited. "You saw it?" Nay asked. Eli nodded. Lura reached out and touched his arm gently. "Then we build now." But far above the sanctuary, the past had followed. Back in orbit, the human fleet tracked the pulse from the opened gate, though most systems refused to respond. One vessel, the Ardent Silence, had managed to survive the Vault's message, and Admiral Nolan was still in command. He stared at the readings in disbelief. "The gate is open, and he didn't destroy us, he left," his lieutenant whispered. He crossed over. Without violence. Nolan turned slowly. "And what does that make him now?" The officer said nothing. The Admiral spoke again. "Prep the strike teams. If he opens more gates, We lose control of the outer sectors. He's unifying them under something we don't understand. As the order went out, the human fleet prepared to follow. Eli stood at the edge of a crystalline balcony, looking out over the sanctuary. The twins stood beside him, each holding one of his hands. He knew what was coming. Humanity wouldn't accept what they didn't understand, not yet. But he wouldn't hide either. The gate remained open, and the message had already been sent. The Forgotten were returning, and they were bringing a human, a light that could not be erased. The sanctuary world breathed with golden rhythm as dawn rolled across its horizonless sky. The crystal towers of the Forgotten shimmered in harmony, no longer asleep but alive. At the heart of it stood Eli, a scavenger now, the living bridge between two civilizations long estranged. He gazed upward toward the edge of the sky where the stars folded strangely. Something stirred, a pulse, a warning. The gate still hummed behind him, a silent engine of possibility, but possibility always drew those who feared it. They had followed the ardent silence. Earth Command's elite dreadnought emerged from folded space, trailing its warfleet like a wolf among a dying herd. Admiral Nolan stood in his command chamber, eyes locked on the glowing world below. What he saw unsettled him. Structures that reshaped themselves like thoughts. Power readings, higher than anything registered in recorded history, and at the center, one man standing between two glowing girls. "This place isn't a vault," he said quietly. "It's a seed, sir," his second-in-command asked. Nolan's jaw tightened. "And he's planting it." He pressed a button. The fleet primed its strike. Back on the surface, Eli turned toward the sky. He could feel it not through machines, but through the connection now burned into his soul. The twins stood at his sides, their faces unreadable, their hands warm in his. "They'll try to erase us," he said. "They always do," Laura whispered. "But not this time," Nay added. "Not if you believe in what we are." Eli nodded. "Then let's show them." He led them down the crystal path, into the tower's core now, a living control center. The walls shimmered, responding to his presence. Screens unfolded, showing the entire sanctuary system, defense nodes, Stargate paths, energy fields powered by ancient relics waiting to be awakened. "Can we stop them?" he asked. Laura looked at the screens. "We can shield the planet," Nay added, "but not without cost." He understood. It wasn't just about survival. It was about message, meaning, mercy. "I don't want to kill them," Eli said. Laura nodded. "That's why they fear you." Far above, Admiral Nolan prepared for the final act. His hand hovered over the command. Orbital beam strikes were ready. Anti-psionic warheads, kinetic rods, AI scramblers all, aimed at wiping the sanctuary clean. "Begin." "Countdown," he said. 10 minutes, but as the fleet armed itself, something happened. Dozens of new gates opened, not just in the sanctuary sky but across forgotten systems, abandoned moons, worlds where life had once thrived before being erased by empire or fear. Gates lost to time now shimmered with blue-gold light. Ships emerged. Not warships, arks, sanctuaries, messages, from hundreds of species long thought extinct. The Forgotten were awakening, and they were answering Eli's call. Back in the sanctuary, the control tower lit with thousands of points of contact, ancient frequencies from planets no longer mapped, civilizations erased from Earth's history books, all pulsing back. And all saying the same thing. "We remember, we're coming." Eli turned to the twins. "What do we do?" Laura stepped forward and placed both her hands on the crystal interface. "We amplify the signal," Nay followed. "And we protect the bridge." Eli stepped between them and placed his hand atop theirs. The system ignited. The tower's beacon flared upward like a second sun. It rippled across space, sending a wave of golden light that passed through the warp ships. Suddenly, the Earth fleet's weapons began to fail one by one. Not by destruction, but by hesitation. In each ship, a presence emerged. Memories. Soldiers saw visions of what this place represented. Engineers heard voices of creators begging for connection. Some wept. Others dropped their weapons. But Admiral Nolan was unmoved. He stood on the bridge of the ardent silence, watching his crew falter. "They're manipulating us," he growled. "No, sir," one soldier whispered. "They're inviting us." Double quotes. Nolan snapped. "Fire the core strike." But the systems no longer listened. In the center of the sanctuary, Eli stood alone now. The twins had collapsed beside the pedestal, drained, but breathing. They had given all they could. Eli felt something ancient stir within him. The bond had evolved, no longer just a bridge, now a voice. His body lifted off the ground. The sky above him split like the surface of a still pond. The voice of the sanctuary flowed through him not in words, but in resonance, and he spoke through it, not to attack, not to conquer, but to offer a choice. Across the warships, every crew member heard the same phrase, not from outside, but from within. You do not have to be afraid. You only have to decide. And then everything fell silent, no explosions, no fire, just stars. The ardent silence turned away, one by one. The warships disengaged, not defeated, but changed. Back on the surface, Eli dropped to his knees, breath shallow. The light faded from his skin. The gate behind him shimmered gently, awaiting its next traveler. Lura sat up first. She looked at the tower, at the sky, and smiled faintly. They didn't destroy us, she whispered. Nae opened her eyes and laughed, soft and tired. They listened. Eli sat between them, placing one hand on each of their shoulders. I didn't know I could do that, he said. Lura rested her head against his arm. You didn't, until you had to. The sanctuary pulsed again, and a new structure rose from the ground, a monument of light and stone. 3 figures carved at its center, a man, 2 children, not labeled, just known. Years passed. Children, alien and human, would come to this place and ask who he was. They would be told, he was not their blood. He was not chosen by war. He was chosen by love. And beneath the monument, etched in both forgotten runes and Earth's simple alphabet, read the final message: family is not born, it is chosen.